Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Liverman?
Here.
Ms. Butler?
Here.
Mr. Simon is on the phone link, and Mayor Lempert is absent.
Before starting the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance, I'd like to ask you to observe a moment of silence in honor and in the memory of Zvi Iref. Zvi was a charter member of the former township's Citizens Finance Advisory Committee and played a very unsung role in helping the municipality acquire what is now much of the land on the Princeton Ridge Preserve. So join me in a moment of silence, please. Thank you, and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The first item on our agenda this evening is comments from the audience on items not on the agenda. There was a public comment sign-in sheet that was available, and two people have signed, Linda Auerbach and Paul Driscoll.
Go ahead if you want.
And would either of you please take the microphone?
Shall I give a copy of this first?
Hi, hello. My name is Linda Auerbach, Lytle Street. I'd just like to read a statement. According to Mr. Curran's article in the Friday, April 18th, 2014 Princeton Packet, Princeton's town engineer, Bob Kaiser, has commenced issuing certain permits to Avalon Bay related to the developer's initiation of demolition of the former hospital site. Things are moving right along. My hope is that they are not going to be moving, quote, wrong along. At the Princeton Town Council meeting of April 7th, a Harris Road resident told the council that he had filed an Open Public Records Act request 3 times to review Dr. Ira Whitman's original report, which had been referenced at the March 10th council meeting, which referencing would thereby make the original report, presumably, a public document. Dr. Whitman, for those who may not know, is the LSRP hired by the town to, quote, evaluate environmental issues at Princeton Hospital associated with the lately disclosed, that's my quote, medical waste incinerator, and with demolition of existing structures as the site is redeveloped into a multi-unit rental apartment complex. That quote comes from Whitman's LSRP report from March 2014. In response to the resident's comment, Municipal Attorney Trishka Cecil said that since the report was a draft, it is not subject to the Public Records Act. But can there really be an original draft, as it was referred to, especially if Dr. Whitman referenced it while negotiating with Avalon Bay and its consultants? Once the information has been shared with Avalon Bay, does not the original document become a public document which is no longer deliberative or confidential in nature? At the March 10th council meeting, Councilmember Simon asked who had permitted this negotiation by Dr. Whitman with Avalon Bay, and he requested a copy of Whitman's initial unedited recommendations. Why doesn't the public also have the right to know what was contained in that same report? After all, it contains material related to the public health, safety, and welfare of all citizens, including the many children who live in or attend schools in the hospital site neighborhood. After the negotiations, Dr. Whitman downgraded his original recommendation and deleted lead from the substances designated for soil testing related to the incinerator. Lead, as Whitman acknowledged, was negotiated away by Avalon Bay, even though it is a known byproduct of medical waste incinerators. Local candidates have been campaigning for openness and transparency in government. Sadly, it may be that the newly formed town of Princeton is a long way from achieving this. Depriving the citizenry of potentially critical information which may directly affect its well-being sets a terrible precedent. Precisely what doesn't our local government think we should see? I quote Councilman Lance Liverman. He hoped that Avalon Bay would have, quote, come to the table and said, "We don't have to do this, but we're going to do it." Mr. Liverman then said, "We need more testing." I too hope that a desire for rigorous inquiry and truth-seeking will prevail.
We're trying to get one of the council.
Sorry, one of our colleagues is calling in. We're listening. Sorry, Linda. Yeah.
Shall I continue? Oh, it's just one more sentence. I too hope that the desire for rigorous inquiry and truth-seeking will prevail, and that it will prompt the council to release to the public all information contained in Dr. Whitman's original report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Auerbach. Mr. Driscoll?
Paul Driscoll, Harris Road. I have a couple of questions, actually, that I'd ask of the council tonight. At the March 22nd Witherspoon Street Jackson meeting, Joseph Weiss, an architect who lives in the neighborhood, asked whether the demolition permit for Avalon Bay would be issued before the developer's agreement is signed, and the response was no. So my first question is, in context with that meeting, which was attended by both members of Town Council and the Engineering Department, why were demolition permits for Avalon Bay to erect fencing, remove underground storage tanks, as well as interior asbestos granted when there was no agreement in place? And I'm wondering if anybody can answer that question. Do you want me to ask it again?
I think Bob's ready.
No, I think we heard your question. Would you please continue?
Oh, you want me to ask the next question?
Please continue.
The second question is, shouldn't the 4 air monitors be functioning before any asbestos abatement starts? The third question I have, if it's only for interior abatement, which I'm assuming it may be, how will residents know that none escapes, no doors or windows will be open? What about the asbestos that's at the exterior, such as at waterproofing or foundations and at roof? And the last question I have, it's actually a follow-up. 4 weeks ago at the March 24th council meeting, I asked if the town intends to delete the 8-inch sewer line going to Witherspoon Street. At that time, there was no answer. So now that the demolition permit has been granted to Avalon Bay, or the go-ahead for some of the work, can you tell me if the only sewer hookup will be at Henry Avenue?
Mr. Kaiser, would you care to comment briefly on the 4 questions that Mr. Driscoll posed?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Council President Miller. Let me clarify things, and that is no demolition permit has been issued. There was an application for a fence installation, and that permit was issued. And also, there was an application to remove 6 underground storage tanks and to start the asbestos removal. That is not demolition work, and what you heard at the meeting is that there would be a neighborhood meeting prior to issuance of a demolition permit is correct. The work that is proceeding at this point is not demolition work, and the municipality had no basis to prohibit the applicant or the developer from proceeding with that work. Second item, regarding the air monitors, The asbestos work that will be proceeding is entirely indoors. All the windows will be shut, all the doors will be shut, the buildings will be entirely secured. There's no possibility of any asbestos getting outside of those buildings. Once work starts on the outside of the buildings, then it would be a different situation. Air monitoring would have to be in place and so forth, but there's no authorization at this point to do any work of asbestos removal on the outside of the buildings, only on the inside of the buildings. Question is, if it's only interior abatement, how will residents know that none escapes, no doors, windows open, and so forth? It's required that operation be conducted in that manner with everything being closed, and we're going to be having people following up and monitoring that operation as it proceeds. Regarding the sewer line question, I checked, and our sewer operating committee has reviewed the hydraulic calculations, and they have determined that only the one sewer connection is required for the site based on the plan as proposed.
I know that there are many neighbors that were concerned about that there was some anxiety about that it would only be using one sewer hookup. And I don't think that anxiety has gone away. So, but I'm glad I have an answer. Thank you. I did have a question about the underground storage tanks. Isn't that in some way an environmental hazard that if we don't have the developer's agreement signed, and I may be confused on this because, I'm not an expert by any means. So if you're removing the underground storage tanks and there is soil that needs to be tested in that area, can you do it safely prior to having the developer's agreement in place where you can be assured that it's going to be done correctly?
As the tanks are pulled, the developer will have their LSRP on site, and also Dr. Whitman is going to have his people, when we contact him, be there as well, and the soil will be checked, and if there's any appearance of any type of contamination, those tests would be done, and if contamination is found, immediately DEP would be contacted. There would be a DEP incident number, and the state would then take over and monitor the operation relating to any soils that would have to be further tested or removed from the site.
But isn't that, to me, that sounds like a part of the demolition process, that would be something that the developer would not go ahead and do until they had signed off on a developer's agreement and a full demolition process had been approved, because that's what many of the residents have been asking about the last couple of weeks. At least I think that's what they've been asking about.
In working with our building department, the tank removal is not part of a demolition type application or permit. It's something that's commonly granted all through the community.
But isn't that what people have been asking about with the soil testing that's been so controversial? I mean, that's what people have been very concerned about, that how the pipes are tested, how the cameras run down. Shouldn't that be, I don't quite understand why we allowed the permit, why would we go forward with a permit anyway if a demolition plan and developer's agreement has not been approved? I mean, it seems to me that you'd want to have everything in place before you issued those permits.
Let me give this a shot and try to help Bob out a little bit. When we sat down with our staff, we have to look at this project as to what is reasonable not only in our eyes, but in the state's eyes, who monitors our construction office and so forth. We only can hold permit applications so long. If they meet the general criteria of a permit, which these are. It could be any residential permit could come in and decide they want to take a tank out. We get them fairly regularly. We probably do 15, 20 of them a year for all I know. I know that we do them fairly regularly. So we can't just arbitrarily hold them back for that. What we want to be is reasonable. If we are going to end up in litigation, which we don't know one way or the other, one of the things we want to do is stand on the merits of the decisions that the council has made and not appear to be arbitrary and making their progress, unreasonably long. They can put the fence permit up. I mean, obviously, it's tied to securing the site, which you want to do no matter what's going on. All of those are reasonable measures, and I think Bob is tried to be as conservative and careful as possible with how we proceed once we get to the pressure point of them, trying to get a demolition permit, which will not be issued until we're satisfied with the developer's agreement and so forth. So that's going to be the pressure point. Right now, we'll have to see where they go, whether they decide to sign the agreement or not, but we want to be reasonable in the eyes of the town, obviously the residents, and ultimately perhaps the court. So that's really the premise. We'll hold what we can, and what we can't, we're just going to have to issue and let them do their work and monitor it.
Thank you, Mr. Brush. I thank you, Mr. Kaiser, and thank you, Mr. Driscoll. Are there any other questions from the public on items that are not on the agenda?
Thank you, Honorable Counsel. I'm very pleased you're here, and I thank you for the opportunity to appear before you. I come to speak not only for myself, but from various Latino groups and from the national NAACP. Would you please state your name and address for the record? I'm Dr. Sam Hamad, Hamod. I own the property from 282 to 286 Witherspoon Street here in Princeton. My voice is a bit hoarse. I've had a throat infection, but I wanted to be here. I want to follow up and add to what Ms. Auerbach said earlier, because I brought it to the attorney's attention last time. She had not known that Mr. Simon had actually discussed the negotiation that Dr. Whitman wasn't supposed to be making, so that there was an awareness, and she had said, I don't know about that. Well, as I told her at that time, she should have known as a city attorney what was going on, what had actually transpired. So again, I want to clarify that on behalf of Ms. Auerbach's comment. I also want to follow up Mr. Driscoll's comments by saying that what we're pleading for in all cases, and I know you would feel the same if you were in our shoes, we want transparency. All of you promised that in your campaigns. We know you're citizens of Princeton as we are. You would want that transparency for your neighborhood. We want the same. That's all we're asking. And so this transparency is very important to you in the future, because sometime Mr. Miller, Mr. Liverman, Ms. Butler, Ms. Krumiller, Ms. Howard, you won't be on the council, and decisions will come. You'll say, well, tell us more. Well, we don't have to. If you set that precedent, you could become victimized by it. Remember that. That's what I'm trying to get at. We all are. The other thing has to do with the fact that we do appreciate what you did in terms of having Mr. Whitman be more precise and harder-nosed, and Mr. Kaiser for following up what you did. We appreciate that, many of us. Some may say it out loud, others may not, but I will say it out loud. I'm very pleased with the revisions that were made. Many of us are. That's what we were asking you for, and you provided that, so we thank you. As Mr. Liverman said, though, I live over there, too. I'm worried about it. We are. But not so worried that we don't want to stop it, Mr. Brucey. That's not the point. The important thing is to be careful that when it is done, it's done right. And that's what we're depending on Mr. Kaiser and Mr. West to help us get. Absolutely. So the last thing I want to say, and this is a very important matter, this is why I talked to NAACP and also some Latino groups in Washington, D.C. about this. We are concerned about the tax situation, gentrification. We do not believe, nor do they, nor do professors at University of Michigan that I talked to in Northwestern, that Princeton is paying a fair share of its taxes. Northwestern, which is a private university, part of the Big Ten, pays more percentage of taxes than Princeton, and yet Princeton has the largest endowment of any university in the world. We would not be hurting them to ask to have them pay the same percentage of taxes the rest of us pay. That's all we're saying, because you're wrestling with the budget situation. They're paying no more than 20, 25% of what they should be paying, and they give us a donation. They're a private university. They make money. They're not here for just the public good. I taught here at this university. I know what it's about. So do you if you look at it closely. So what I'm saying is that I think it's time we start saying, no, you should be taxed the way the rest of us are. The way Mr. Liverman and Mr. Miller, Ms. Krumiller, Ms. Butler, Ms. Howard, Ms. Limpert, how we're all taxed. It's only fair because we don't want to bear the burden of all the universities. They get our services, police, fire, streets, stoplights. Their students run in front of our cars. I mean, there is a lot here we give them. They're part of the community, but remember then, as we pay to be part of this community, so too should they pay their fair share. This will help you balance your budget, cut our taxes, and make sure then that we all have a fair shot at our survival. And this minority diversity, which we need in Princeton, we don't need this to become an Anglo ghetto, which could happen. Clearly this could happen if we continue this gentrification. Many of the African-American families and Latino families are trying to figure out how they're going to survive. I'm trying to survive. I have more money than most people, but I have to think about the same thing. My taxes used to be $2,500 to $3,000. They're up over $12,000 now. You know, it's a lot of money. The university's not paying nearly what I'm paying. In that case, if you put me at the same level of the university, then I should be paying $4,000 a year. Is that fair? No, of course not. Remember what I'm saying to you. If you let them get away with a long-term agreement, which I know you've been talking about, you're going to be making a big mistake that will not be a good thing for your legacy. And the last thing relates to what I said when I first began speaking tonight. Why not let us hear the discussions? Why, Mr. Miller, do you have to be in closed session with them? A lot of us are educated people. We know about money. You know, I went to Northwestern University and majored in business and communications. There are the people here who are more educated than I am. Why don't you have us involved in this as well? Don't need to keep it secret. If you do keep it secret, it's not good. I would say then some of us may have to find a way to say to you, you're wrong, and we would find every legal means necessary to stop you from doing it. And this is not a threat, it's a statement of fact. We don't want to have to carry the university on our shoulders, but we are. So please, open these meetings, let us be part of it, and don't make a hasty decision. Mr. Miller, I know you're part of the group allegedly negotiating, but don't feel like you have to be stuck in that negotiation. Negotiate for us, not for them. Princeton's not going to go anywhere. This university is not going to move. Northwestern's not going to move. Michigan's not going to move. So think about this. Again, thank you for your courtesy and taking time for this, and we wish you the best, and we hope that our words will sink in such a way that you will see yourselves in our positions, and you'll also see the future for yourselves and for your children vis-a-vis taxes and transparency. Thank you very much, and God bless you.
Thank you, Dr. Hamad. Are there any other comments from the public on items not on the agenda? Sure. Joe, go ahead.
Our municipal attorney is not here tonight, Bob Brusheye.
No, I didn't see any reason to actually have her. It was just a budget meeting, so.
Well, I've received a request, I know Patrick has received a request, some inquiry about the original report from Dr. Whitman, and my impression is that when we took the step that we did at the last meeting when we discussed Avalon Bay, we in effect stood by his original recommendations. And so would you ask the municipal attorney again whether or not that we can release that draft?
Ms. Cherry?
Kip Cherry, 24 Dempsey. I just have a point of information. The workshops coming up on the departmental budgets, is the public going to be able to make some comments about those? Okay. Save my fire, right?
Certainly.
Thanks.
I'll close the comments from the public and move on to the agenda. Next item on the agenda is a presentation by Jeff Nathanson from the Arts Council of Princeton. Jeff, welcome.
Hello, members of the council and ladies and gentlemen, members of the community. My name is Jeff Nathanson. I'm executive director of the Arts Council of Princeton, and it's our pleasure tonight to present our annual neighborhood and community report. Every spring we come before council, usually right before Communiversity Festival of the Arts, which is our largest event of the year. I have just distributed some flyers to members of the council and for the public. If anybody would like to have a flyer, I'll have these at the back of the room. Hopefully you've seen a lot of information about this upcoming event. With me tonight are members of the Arts Council staff, Board of Trustees, and faculty. I'd like to introduce them now. Ben Colbert is a member of our Board of Trustees and co-chair of the Paul Robeson House. Raise your hand, please, Ben. Robert Jenkins, a member of our faculty for many, many years. You live in Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood? Is that true? You live further north. Ben Colbert was a member of a resident of the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood. And one of the things that we do every year is talk about our services and our the input and impact we have with the neighborhood because of the historic position of our building in that neighborhood. Libby Ramage, who's next to Mr. Jenkins, is a faculty member and is at the Princeton Nursery School providing free art classes to the students of the Princeton Nursery School. Maria Evans is our artistic director and a longtime resident of the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood and Lee Avenue, and she runs our community outreach programs and our gallery programs. Oshila Brown is new to our staff. She is in our education department and is in charge of our scholarships, a very important program for children in our community. Ted Deutsch, a member of our Board of Trustees, chair of our marketing committee, and I think I saw Orlando Fouquin also on our Board of Trustees. Thank you for coming, Orlando. He's a resident of the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood, and also Gail Everett, a member of our Board of Trustees and a resident of the neighborhood. So I'm going to talk for a few minutes about Communiversity Festival of the Arts, and then I'm going to go right into our neighborhood report. Communiversity has been a collaboration between the university, the students of the university, and the Arts Council of Princeton for over 40 years. Without the support of the town, we couldn't put on an event that has grown from about 15,000 attendees. That was my first year involved, 2005, and last year it had grown to over 40,000 attendees, making it the largest cultural event in the region. I think we can all be proud that not only this event, but our town draws such enthusiastic response from the region. The report that I sent to members of the council prior to this presentation, just for members of the public and press, this report will be available on our website at artscouncilofprinceton.org. In the report, we talk about the many activities we have that support the neighborhood and the community. But first, in our introduction, I want to just talk about the growth of the Arts Council of Princeton. I think we're all aware of the Paul Robeson Center. It opened to the public in 2008 in the month of June after almost 3 years under renovation and expansion. The original building, of course, dates back to the 1930s, a WPA-era building that was renovated with a design by Michael Graves, a local architect. In 2007, our annual operating budget was under $750,000. This year, our annual operating budget is well over $1.5 million and expected to grow to $1.6 in the coming fiscal year. Our growth has been tremendous. We've more than doubled our membership, our programming overall, and the number of students enrolled in our classes and workshops. But contrary to the opinion or knowledge of many people, we, as a nonprofit organization and an independent nonprofit organization, must raise about 50% of our operating budget every year. So it's really the community that supports us, and we thank the membership that we have in our community. We have over 2,500 current active members, and of course, corporate, foundation, and state government support. It's challenging for us in this current economic climate because we, as many community arts organizations across the nation do, we provide low-cost and free programs to the community. So I'm going to talk a lot about those free and low-cost activities, and it's impressive and it's fantastic, and we're pleased to do it. But we are always going out to the community asking for help. And sometimes we hear, why do you keep asking for money? Well, we have to. Otherwise, we couldn't provide the community programs that we provide. One thing that I think really illustrates, it underscores how important it is to work with the community is the number of volunteers that we have working with us on an annual basis. This past year, we've had over 350 volunteers involved with our events and activities and programs who logged in over 3,000 hours. And that's above and beyond a class, a staff of 12 and a faculty of about 95 instructors. The background that I have in this report talks a little bit about the successes that we've had. In this past year, we received, for the third consecutive year, the People's Choice Award for Best Art Gallery, the favorite art gallery in the state of New Jersey. That's from Discover Jersey Arts. We have received the Governor's Award for Excellence in Arts Education. For multiple years, we are cited by the New Jersey State Council on the Arts with its Citation of Excellence. And our programs are centered in our Solly Theater, our Paul Robeson Center for the Arts, the Taplin Gallery in that center. And we try to make our programs as affordable and accessible as possible, so you can see throughout the year on a weekly and monthly basis concerts, plays, readings, rehearsals, and classes. It's become an invaluable location for community performances, meetings, gatherings, and events. And so you can actually see that we've been successful in bringing the community into the Arts Center, which is one of the main objectives we had when we expanded the building. As successful as we've been in increasing our programming within the walls of the Robeson Center, we've been equally successful in expanding outside of our walls. And so I wanted to point out that we have free after-school art classes for disadvantaged youth in partnership with Princeton Young Achievers, with Princeton Nursery School, as I had mentioned before. I just want to point out that Mr. Jenkins and Ms. Ramage and Ms. Evans have all been very active in going to schools, to community centers like Pinnell Learning Center, and other locations in order to provide these very important after-school art classes and at the nursery school during the regular course of their school day. Our community events are among the most popular events in town on a regular basis all through the year. Black History Month, Cinco de Mayo, Day of the Dead, our Halloween parade. All of these are very important illustrations of how the Arts Council has really become central to community life and cultural life for Princeton. We've expanded beyond these events and now are really working with the community and with artists and with local business owners to try to get public art more into the cultural fabric of our community. So in spring of 2012, we sponsored the Continuum Mural, which is a landmark location now on the wall of Terra Momo Bakery, right across the street from our building. And last year, you'll recall, we ran a mural project with Nancy Schill and her group of volunteers as a commemoration of the consolidation of our town, and it's right outside these council chambers on the wall. So we now have additional public art projects in the works that I'll be talking about in just a couple of minutes. I do want to point out, though, before I move on, that national studies show the importance of arts and quality arts education to a community. These reports over the last 25 years substantiate that the arts provide one of the most effective methods of increasing academic achievement and literacy in students. Art is not something extra or frivolous. Art is essential to the learning and the healthy well-being of our students and members of our community. So when I talk about our programs, please understand it in that context. In an ongoing effort for us to maintain and develop some stability for our organization and our ability to go out to the community and offer low-cost and free programs, we have been on a campaign to raise funds, especially for an endowment. The first of the endowment gifts that we got in 2007 was a legacy gift from the J. Seward Johnson Charitable Trust. We got $250,000 that generates income monthly so that we can provide, at least in part, support programs that directly impact and directly affect the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood. So recently, for Black History Month, we were able to show a free film and with a commentary and a question and answer segment that was led by our neighborhood historian Shirley Satterfield. This was the Princeton Plan 50 years later. Such an important activity for us to look back, review, and see how our history has progressed. Just recently, for the birthday celebration for Paul Robeson, we were able to show a free screening of Showboat. Ben Colbert was a host for the event with us, and the Q&A and the participation from the neighborhood and the general community was really outstanding. I'm moving on to page 4 in the report, and I just want to talk about our Artreach projects beyond the nursery school and PYA. We now have started a teen after-school program. We started this in the fall with a project called Junk Jam, which had up to 18 teens who were involved with spoken word and music performance activities. This was in partnership with Corner House, which of course is Princeton, and Life Ties from Trenton. Our Kids at Work program, which is run by Maria Evans, that program has over 200 school children coming through our gallery and then into the studio on a program that runs in the fall and the spring. It's a fantastic way for children to learn firsthand about the arts and about the exhibitions in our gallery. We have a Princeton High School community service group that works with us. We have 15 to 20 teenagers who are volunteers in our programs. We have Witherspoon Middle School tours. We partner with the Princeton Public Library. I was pleased to see Leslie Berger and Tim Quinn here. Every September, Witherspoon Middle School brings kids to the Arts Council's Paul Robeson Center and to the public library for a tour, so they can really learn firsthand what the resources are at their disposal. I'll also, this is an aside because it isn't really related so much to the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood, but we are very proud to continue a long partnership with the Princeton Public Library in presenting free exhibitions of local artist work on the second floor of the library. For many years, the Arts Council was looked at as the organization that provides programs for children. This remains true. We certainly have increased those programs, but over the last 2 to 3 years, we've developed and expanded our programs for seniors. These are programs within our Arts and Healthcare initiative we call creative aging programs, and we also have an Art for Caregivers program. We now are going to, with an artist on a weekly basis, to assisted living facilities like Elm Court and other private locations. We are sending an artist on a weekly basis to the Princeton Medical Center. And we are also now working with Carrier Clinic to send an artist once a week to that psychiatric hospital a little bit north of us. You'll see a lot more programming from the Arts Council of Princeton in terms of arts and healthcare and our outreach to seniors and those with disabilities. I mentioned before about our public events. There's some more information in this report on Cinco de Mayo and our Free Fall open house, the Halloween parade, and some of those other activities, so I won't take time right now. But I do want to mention a very important publication that we produce every June. We're now in our 6th year. This is called Amuse. It's a publication that had previously been called Underage. And Amuse is a collective journal for students K through 12, poetry, prose, and artwork. It's a fantastic compilation of work on an annual basis, and we work with the local schools, both public and private, from Princeton all the way down to Trenton. We collaborate with many of our sister organizations who work with youth, the library, the rec department, Corner House, and High Tops in particular, on teen programs, and our next teen open mic night. We would invite you to join us on May 2nd for that, but adults are not allowed. It's for kids only. We had mentioned a couple of artists, these mural projects with Nancy Schill and Elia Barger. This part of our Artist in Residence program, more and more we're focusing our Artist in Residence program on projects that really affect the community. Our summer concert series at Princeton Shopping Center is continuing and growing. It's been very successful. We're now actually partnering with the shopping center so that we can do a better job on projects such as Day of the Dead and other events. So we are able to hold some of those events actually at the shopping center and have a little bit more money to work with, so they're bigger and better. I had mentioned our teen program. It's actually expanded and continuing in the spring. We're now calling it CAPS. That's the Community Art and Performance Sessions. And we're very proud to be partnering with Corner House to be working with those students on music composition in an after-school program. I would be remiss if I didn't mention our annual community play, especially this past February, when our own Mayor Lempert had a cameo appearance in the play for, I think, all 3 of the performances. We're very proud to umbrella performance and arts groups such as Princeton Variety Theater, and so these are very, very effective ways of bringing the community together. There were all over 30 people who collaborated to put on this production of Jack and the Beanstalk, and we had 3 sold-out shows. I had mentioned Black History Month and Paul Robeson birthday, Communiversity, so I'm skipping over now to page 6 in our report. And don't worry, people, there's only 7 pages, so I'm getting near the end. As I mentioned before, Sheila Brown is in charge of our scholarship program. This past year, we gave out over $20,000 in scholarships to local students. There's a breakdown in this paragraph here that you can read, but really the important part is that because we have mostly fee-based classes and workshops, we are concerned that not everybody can access them. So this is a big challenge for the Arts Council to provide scholarships and access for everybody in our community so that the cost should not be a barrier. I have a paragraph in this report that talks about our collaborations. Probably this is something that we could have beefed up because collaboration is really one of the most important strategies we use to reach more people and to be a greater impact on the community. Princeton Symphony Orchestra, Youth Concerns Committee, every month using a space in our building, the Princeton Area Arts and Culture Consortium, which includes over 30 arts and cultural organizations in the region with whom we have collaborative relationships. And on top of that, we are very active with the Chamber of Commerce, the Princeton Merchants Association, and non-arts groups, because art should be part of every aspect of community life. We're excited because public art, as I had mentioned briefly before, and now would like to just point your attention to the future. We have a project that is underway. It is now in the design phase for a mosaic mural by the local artist Antonio Selden. Maria is working with Antonio on this. This will go up on a wall on the corner of John and Lee Streets in the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood. We're really excited about it. I think it's a corner that really needs some help, and so we're going to provide an artistic solution. Talk about artistic solutions. We know that the Avalon Bay project is controversial. We also want to be part of the solution there, assuming that it goes forward. The construction fence will not be an ugly fence. It will be beautified by a design that Maria and Libby Ramage, working with children. Actually, Bob, did you have a role in that too? No? Yeah. Well, anyway, the kids made the designs. It's going to go up on the fence. It's going to be beautiful. That'll be temporary. It'll be up as long as the construction is up. Once the construction is complete, there will also be a public art permanent installation as part of the Avalon Bay development. We're excited that we can be part of something that makes a new development more relevant and more aesthetically beautiful for the community. I'm going to just jump to the final page here, and I just want to mention that we are now trying to work more with local schools. We are running a pilot program with Riverside School and have just started an after-school art club with them. We designed this club for 20 students. We've now had over 40 students sign up for it. So there's obviously an interest and a demand. The final section of our report talks about the permanent representation for the Witherspoon-Jackson neighborhood and its history. I invite everybody to come down and see the neighborhood portrait exhibition curated by Shirley Satterfield from photographs that were collected by the Historical Society, and also the neighborhood quilt with 90 photographs of people and places pertaining to the African American history of the neighborhood. I've introduced our board members. We keep 3 seats on our board for neighborhood representation. We believe this is very important, and we are very pleased that we currently now have on our board the co-chair of the Paul Robeson House. We hope that we can develop a very fruitful and successful relationship as the Paul Robeson House is developed, and hopefully in the near future open to the public. So in conclusion, I guess you're all very happy that I'm concluding here. We've been struggling to expand while there's been generally a decrease in funding. One of the ways that we've been able to continue to do our work is through individual contributions. But I do want to point out that unlike most other communities in the U.S., where their arts councils do get municipal funding, we get none. And we are hoping that we can address that in the not too distant future. In the meantime, we will continue to raise funds privately. We will be applying for grants. We will be looking for continued funding from the New Jersey State Council on the Arts and the National Endowment for the Arts. And privately, we will be raising funds to pay off our mortgage. We have a goal of doing that this year, and then increasing our endowment to $5 million by the time we get to our 50th anniversary, which is 2017. So we look forward to continued successes and to serving the Princeton community through arts and culture. And I now would like to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there any questions from council?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you for the opportunity to address the council
Questions?
and present
Jeff,
our
would you
report.
take a minute or two for questions from public, if there are questions?
Thank you very much. Jim Floyd, 64 Harris Road. Jeff, you all are partners with the university.
Not exactly. The question.
But you have a lot to say, and you advertise that you are part of it. Is there any way you can at least be empathetic towards the fact that it moved from a Saturday to a Sunday, and the parking in that Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood you referred to on more than one occasion? That's where most of our churches are located. And I know Mr. Bruchai said that was going to be worked out to the advantage of the faith-based institutions.
Do you have two?
And hopefully you all have worked out something. And maybe the police chief being here, maybe he'll preclude any parking there except for those parishioners who are going to church. Thank you. I'd also like to make a
Question for the
Jeff,
can
I'd just like to repeat the question very briefly, since Mayor Floyd did not have the benefit of a mic. His question was about parking in the Witherspoon Jackson neighborhood on the day of Communiversity, which this year is on a Sunday.
Yes, I'd be glad to address that. I will first mention, though, the partnership we have is with the students of Princeton University and not specifically with the university, just for clarification. 2 years ago, the Princeton Merchants Association approached the Arts Council with a request to move the event, the Communiversity event, from a Saturday to a Sunday. We thought that that would possibly be of concern to some people in the community, so we convened a meeting with representatives of the Clergy Association, the Merchants Association, the University Community Affairs Office, and the town. I think Mayor Moore was attending those meetings at the time, and Mr. Bruchai. Last year, our plan for Communiversity for Sunday included several concessions because of the concerns the Clergy Association had. One of those concessions was to move the timing of the event from noon to 5 to 1 to 6. So we started the event an hour later in order for churchgoers to be able to get through services and leave downtown if they so desired. We are doing that again this year, and we have done additional outreach through the Clergy Association and directly to all of the congregations in order to hear concerns. And we have worked with some of the churches specifically to make sure that there are either parking considerations or the changing of the timing on church services that particular day. Will there be an impact of traffic coming in town around noon and thereafter? Yes, there will. Will it be a problem for some people? I'm sorry to say it probably will be, but I must say that the police department has been extremely cooperative. Mr. Bershai and his staff extremely cooperative, and also the Clergy Association and the church leaderships have been very cooperative. So we are hopeful that this year is a bit easier to navigate in terms of traffic and parking than last year. We will monitor it. If there's any additional concerns, we'll try to address them.
Thank you, Jeff. In the interest of moving ahead with the rest of our agenda, unless I see someone who would like to address another question to Jeff, I'd like to move on with the agenda. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you very much.
I think we all appreciate the work that's done by the Arts Council, and it's great to hear of your achievements during the past year, and we look forward to many more.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
The next item on our agenda listed is the application of renewal, Comcast of Central New Jersey. This is a renewal of a franchise agreement by Comcast to provide cable video services to the residents of Princeton. Although it's listed on the agenda, Comcast will not be presenting to us tonight because of noticing requirements. This particular hearing of the application will be deferred for perhaps 45 to 60 days and rescheduled at a later date. At this point, I'd like to move ahead with the work session, the budget workshop, and start with the Corner House. And I'd like to ask each of the presenters to try and stay well within a 20-minute presentation, allowing time within the 20 minutes for questions from both council and from the public. So, Gary de Blasio, Director of Corner House.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank everyone for allowing me to review the Corner House budget with you this evening.
Excuse me. Could you guys take your conversation outside?
Yeah.
Thank you. So.
Speak up. Thank you very
Okay.
much. We really appreciate your help. The Winston Jackson neighborhood. I'm sorry, Mr. Romero.
I couldn't hear.
Okay. I'd like to make a few observations first as we move through the pages in front of our budget. Please see that our budget still comes in almost $10,000 less than last year's budget. Corner House still provides, through grants and donations, approximately 65% of our budget, while the municipality applies approximately 35%. And the Corner House Foundation, $250,000 contribution this year is about 26% of our budget. Our salary and wage is still less than last year's rate by approximately $7,800 due to the retirement of some staff people. Corner House returns approximately $50,000 in fees to the municipality each year. This year we have faced significant funding cuts from both the state of New Jersey and Mercer County. We have specifically lost approximately $19,000 in state cuts to our clinical programs due to cuts from the federal government that the state experienced. We have also experienced cuts in our Mercer County funding by approximately $30,000 due to the reallocation of funding by the Mercer County Office on Addiction Services. In youth services, we experienced a reduction of $35,000 in funding for our outreach programs due to a change in funding priorities at the county. And our outreach programs are continuing to grow, so we're continuing to look in other avenues to make up that difference, and we're happy to say that we now have the Marie L. Matthews outreach programs with a small endowment that was given to us from Ed Matthews, her husband. Marie was a longtime board member of Corner House. This means that our budget this year, the municipal share is approximately an additional $70,000. Please remember that we returned $50,000 in fees to the municipality, which is not accounted for in the budget overview, making the net municipal increase approximately $20,000. In addition, Corner House has positioned ourselves to capture additional funds through our drug court program, as the state is releasing over $6 million in funds starting July 1st, 2014, and we are in the process of developing an intensive outpatient program for drug court, which can capture an additional $20,000 in funding for this addition alone. And we have pretty good relationships with the drug court, and we're being told that our numbers are going to increase starting July 1. So that's the basic information regarding our budget, and you have the specifics. If you need any information on the salary and wages, they're on page 52 and 53 of your detail book.
Are there any questions from members of council? Ms. Krumiller?
Can you tell me a little more about the drug court program?
Corner House has had one of the first drug court programs in Mercer County, and we've been running it since 2001. And through the state and the county, we have clients who are referred to Corner House. They're with us approximately a year and a half after they have completed a residential component, and they're monitored closely by the courts. They have to appear in court every week, and they are our best attending clients, because if they don't attend, they go back to jail. But we're a very highly respected drug court program, and we continually watch it grow each year.
Are these Princeton residents, or are they from around the county?
Both Princeton and around the county. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Gary, great to see you, and I'm glad you asked about that, Jenny, because we were excited when Governor Christie has taken on this issue, and it seems to be an area of growth in state funding, so it sounds like it's an opportunity for Corner House going forward.
It's a good opportunity, yeah.
But let's talk about one of the negative opportunities. You talked about these cuts in county funding. Is there anything we can do? It sounds like, it's obviously over for this year, but when this is happening and the county, how did you nicely put it, changes priorities? Is there anything that we can do to help there? Because we've been on the unfortunate end of the county taxes and Princeton residents, and I think certainly I can imagine all my colleagues and I would be happy to weigh in with the county if we're losing out.
That would be great. We'd appreciate any support from our elected officials, and I know Andrew Coons has also suggested that he will help take a look at this for us too.
But can you tell us more about what happened? Did the program get cut, or did they just
they
give more money to Ewing?
Their funding to the Trenton area, and so our programs had a decrease in funding because of that, and so we're trying in a number of ways and looking for private grants, foundation grants, personal donations, endowments to at least cover each area of our programming.
Or to make it up, hopefully, with some of this drug court stuff, too.
Yes.
Right. Well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, Gary, thanks a lot for coming. Corner House is an example of the best private-public partnership that we've had in years. The agency returns about, about 300. How much does the foundation return to the municipality?
They're contributing $250,000. Is that what you're
$250,000. And I always look at Corner House as an example for a successful relationship to work. So just want to thank you. And like Councilwoman Heather Howard said, the cuts, I'm afraid, are just a lot of the cities like Trenton and the heavy cities like Camden and Irvington and Patterson. A lot of towns they're reallocating a lot of funding to go there, and it shortens our dollars, which are extremely important. So we ask that when we have, when Corner House has fundraisers or ask for things or whatever, if people can support them, that kind of ponies up a little bit for us. So just thank you very much.
And we enjoy very extensive support from the community. We can always take in a little extra support, but we do have a good support system in the Princeton community. Any other questions?
Any other questions or comments from council, from the public?
Oh, I have one question.
Go
ahead.
I was just going to ask you, how many, do you have a head count, how many people use your services in the course of a year?
It's a little over 6,000 a year. That between
6,000 individuals or
Yes.
6,000 individuals?
Between our leadership, prevention, outreach, and treatment programs. Because we are, all of our prevention programs and leadership programs are in the Princeton schools, so that's almost 100% go to Princeton residents. Our treatment is the only one that really serves the greater Mercer County and state area because of the funding requirements. But leadership, prevention, and outreach are all municipal based.
All right, Jenny, I was just going to follow up in terms of capital expenses for the 6 year, you're in good shape?
We're in good shape this year. We have a beautiful new facility.
New digs, yeah, good.
That's just what I was going to ask. How's the facility working out?
The facility is great. It's the first year in the 14 years I've been at Corner House that we didn't have 6 staff all winter long. So it's great. We really appreciate it. I want to say I have some of my staff here, our Grant and Development Coordinator, Camille Bloomberg, Prevention Coordinator, Jackie Schreiber, and our Office Manager, Danny Hernandez. So they're here this evening.
Thanks for coming, and thanks for the report and everything you do.
Thank you.
Questions or comments from the public? Gary, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Gary, just one more, because it's come up repeatedly in the Board of Health, and so I want to make sure we put on the record, and you've been really responsive. There's concern in the Board of Health. We read so much in the paper about the increasing use of heroin, especially in suburban communities, and so I think you've reported, and we've talked to Captain Sutter as well, that we're not seeing it yet here in Princeton, but is that still the case, and it's something that's of great concern to the Board of Health?
Not in the schools in Princeton. Yeah. We are seeing it in the community. We do service a number of people who have heroin addictions at Corner House. Marijuana, alcohol, and then the opiates are the next largest group that we treat. I think what we're seeing is that through the population of mostly 18 to 25 is the largest number, and who are not engaged in the community, not engaged in school, not engaged in activities. But we are seeing it in high schools in the surrounding areas now. And that's the first that we have in this year, are seeing it in different communities, which I won't name now, but not Princeton. Not in Princeton, any of the schools at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. Next on the agenda, Princeton Public Library, Library Director Leslie Berger. Welcome, Leslie.
Talk about the library budget again. This year's budget has a very minimal increase requested from the municipality, 0.8% to be exact. There are a number of reasons for that, and I'll go into those in a moment, but I think most important for you to understand is that the library, like Corner House and some of the other agencies you've heard from, is supported both with municipal funds and private funding. So in the budget before you this year, 78% of the library's budget is supported through the requested municipal appropriation, and the rest of the library budget comes from a complicated assortment of donations, individual donations, donations from our foundation, donations from our friends, and what I like to call a number of businesses that we run, some of which are profitable and some of which are not. But business meaning extended late fees, so when people keep their library materials out longer than the contracted period, we actually make some money on that. So I've said it before, I'll say it again, late is great in our book. The reason we were able to keep this budget pretty much even, only a $31,000 or $32,000 increase, is because we had a number of personnel transitions during the year. An unexpected departure of our associate director late in the fall, and we made a conscious decision not to replace that position in 2014. We'll reevaluate at the end of the year and determine whether or not that's a position that we want to replace in 2015. But for now, in 2014, we have removed $100,000 from our budget, so that position is not reflected here. The other good thing, really wonderful thing that's happened is that just about 10 years after we set out to raise $10 million for an endowment. Actually, this is kind of a historic moment for the library. We opened 10 years ago on this coming Thursday, April 24th, 2004 was our first day. Tim tells me we have a series of events planned for Throwback Thursday, so watch your Facebook page. If you're not a fan of the library, be sure to join between now and Thursday so you can see what the throwback pictures look like. But the good news is that we have accomplished our dream of initially raising an endowment to provide a sustainable source of income for the library. Our dream was $10 million. We've done that. We've exceeded it. Last time I looked, our endowment stood at $12.2 million. And what that means is that every year, for as long as our investments are invested wisely, we are spinning off close to $500,000 a year in income that then goes back into the library budget and allows us to create the balance that we're looking to achieve between municipal support and private support. The other great thing that's happened this year is the Friends of the Library have once again increased their contribution to the library. We made some changes last year in terms of the library taking on responsibility for the annual appeal and the Friends taking on more responsibility for events and other fundraising activities, most notably their extraordinary used book sale, which generates incredible income every month. That's one of the winning businesses, about $8,000 a month in used book sales. But they will be contributing $240,000 in 2014 to our budget. And the other good news is that since we have taken the annual appeal in-house and have it run now by our development office staff, that we are meeting and close to exceeding our goal for this year, which is $200,000. So it's kind of a complicated dance that we do in the end to get to the $5 million plus that we think it takes to provide extraordinary library service in this community. What we see is some incredible results as part of that investment. So 850,000 people a year who come through our doors. More than 100 kids that are on our third floor every day after school engaged in activities which range from chess to working with Princeton University and other volunteer tutors, to the thousands of people who come to the library each year to learn how to speak English, or the seniors who come to participate in many of our programs that we do in cooperation with the Suzanne Patterson Center, to the AARP volunteers who just finished up providing tax assistance and filings for low-income people, moderate-income people who can't afford to pay tax preparers, and the list goes on and on and on and on. We truly have become the center of much of this community's life, and it's kind of a little microcosm of what goes on in our community every day, but I get to see it, as does my staff, Tim Quinn, who's with me here this evening, and the other people who, I would say, joyously provide service every single day of the year. So with that, I'm going to stop and let you ask me any questions you may have about the budget request, and try to answer them.
Yeah. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Leah.
How are you?
Good.
I love the library.
Good,
Such
me
a
too.
beautiful library, and it's really homeful, and it's really a nice place. I know before they used to say the library was like the living room of Princeton. I don't know if that saying is still so. One area I was just wondering, when you mentioned all the areas that you were helping out, literacy. Do we do literacy?
We do. We have a partnership with the Literacy Volunteers of Mercer County.
Okay.
So they are there providing on-site tutoring services to people. Honestly, it's kind of shifted. So the need right now is primarily for ESL.
ESL?
And less so on teaching people to read, but occasionally that.
Okay.
They do both, by the way.
Well, thank you.
I want to thank you, too. Everything looks, this is a really nice-looking report, too. I don't know who prepared this, but it's very, it's very nice.
It's probably the
Oh,
next picture.
it's great.
Yeah, that one. Yeah, it's great.
How is the room rental going? Are the rooms being used?
Yes. So we compete with ourselves. So, we do quite a bit of programming at the library, and we're constantly booking the rooms to support the level of program we're doing. But we have also turn those rooms into a revenue source, and a growing revenue source. So we offer the rooms when we're not using them for rental to nonprofits or for-profits, primarily for off-site meetings, not open to the public. And I think we're generating close to $10,000 a year in rental income on those meeting rooms. We could probably do more if we didn't do any programming, but we want to keep that balance.
Hi, Leslie. Thanks. It's great. These infographics are great. One thing you're highlighting here is the increase in the new modalities, and something that's been so great is how innovative you've been about e-books and magazines and access there. But what does that mean in terms of the actual books? You still, have you seen any drop in, or do you still have to have the same number of real books there, even as you've seen this dramatic increase in the e-books?
Yes. So yes, some, and yes and no to others. So what we have done, and any of you who have been in the library recently will notice that the area that opened as the reference portion of the library on April 24th, 2004 no longer exists. We removed most of our reference collection. We still have a small reference collection. Now we're going back again, and we're taking more items from that collection and putting them in the circulating collection and discarding some and keeping others. So that keeps shrinking. The reason for that is we have much better content in digital forms than we do in print forms. So that's changing. This community is not at the tipping point yet of saying we want everything digital. So we are still buying print, we're still buying digital. And I'll give you a very graphic example of the challenge we face in trying to do that. So how many of you have read The Goldfinch? I shouldn't have asked. Okay, never mind. You should read it.
I read Death Comes to Pemberley.
Good.
The most popular
The
book.
Goldfinch just won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. It's a great read when you have uninterrupted amount of time, because it definitely is a page turner. Read it. Anyway, the illustration I was going to use is that we can buy The Goldfinch in hard copy for about $17 from our discounted book suppliers. We want to buy that same book in electronic form. We will pay $90 for that book. Now, it's counterintuitive, right? Because it doesn't cost anything to create a digital book. It's just data. But the publishers are trying to figure out what their sale model is going to be for libraries. So some won't sell to us at all. Some will sell us and say, well, you can have that book for $90, but you can only loan it 26 times, and then you have to buy it again. Others will say, have different pricing models. So we're kind of in a very ambiguous environment in terms of how much we can even afford to buy, because the pricing hasn't yet settled down. So we're doing both, Heather, is the answer to your question. And until we see that there's more devices in people's hands in this community, we need to keep buying physical content.
That actually was my question, was if with the 163% increase in electronics books changed out, what had happened to the cost side of that?
So we're adding more content all the time, and similarly, more and more people are getting devices. So it's not that we're spending that much more on it, as much as more people are coming to us and saying, I just got this device for the Christmas holiday, can you show me how to use it?
Right.
I will tell you on May 1st, this is a really good one. On May 1st, we are subscribing to something new called Hoopla. There's a lot of hoopla about it, but it's streaming video, streaming audiobooks, and streaming music. So with your library card, register May 1st, right, Tim? May 1st, and you should be able to stream directly to your devices.
That's great. I really do appreciate all you have done in terms of trying to turn a profit, as it were, when it's possible. I know that used book sale has just really been a tremendous boon to the bottom line, and that's a great thing. I know that's a lot of volunteer hours, so I do appreciate all you've done, and in particular, we've got the Hurricane Sandy aftermath here. I know how important the library was to so many people during the aftermath of both storms, so I really appreciate all that work.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Questions from the public? I'd like to thank you, Leslie, as somebody who's had a long personal involvement with the library, first as a library card holder, then as a member of the Friends, then as treasurer of the Friends, and I know others up here, Joe Butler, Heather Howard, and Liz Lempert, have also served in one capacity or another with the library. And I would just like to say on behalf of all of us, thank you very much for all that you do for the town. We are truly a literate community, and more so as a result of the library.
Even though maybe not up here, we all need to read Goldfinch.
Okay.
I guess, yes.
Just one other quick question about your capital budget. Do we have capital requests in particular for the library that are notable?
I think, yes, they are notable. So on your, I don't know what you have. Do you have something that looks sort of like this in your workbooks? The full.
They probably just have the total.
Okay, so let me just run through those briefly with you. We were asked as part of a townwide effort to come up with a capital plan, which spanned 5 years or 6 years? 6 years. And so we're in year one of that. What's notable about it is, and I think the town is experiencing the same things with this building, that we have a lot of needs to upgrade our technology infrastructure right now. What was great capacity 10 years ago is inferior capacity now, and I can give you a graphic example, and it has to do with the switches. You have to have on your network switches enough bandwidth to get the data back and forth. And right now we're suffering from switches that are 10 and 11 years old. We get bogged down, our data can't move. So a lot of what we've asked for in the capital budget is for technological upgrades that will allow us to stream the data and provide the digital content that you're all looking for, and to move that data back and forth. We have some another category is building improvements, and that's carpet replacement. We have a 3-year projection on replacing floor by floor. You can imagine what happens when you have 850,000 feet walking on your carpet every year. And if you want a real-life example of that, go to the lending desk, the checkout desk on the first floor. We had to recently replace one of our 3x3 carpet tiles, and that will tell you the entire story of what has happened in 10 years. One looks beautiful, and the rest looks pretty dirty and worn. We are also, this is a technological improvement, requesting replacement of our phone system to voice over IP, which we can't do until we upgrade those network switches. And we've asked for some changes in our self-check and a replacement there so that we can upgrade outdated software that will enable people to do more self-check and enable us to deploy our staff elsewhere.
Are your technology investments, are you working with the municipality or in the schools? Are we doing this as kind of a collaborative effort? I mean,
we are.
I feel like I'm directing this a little bit to Bob McQueen, who's in the closet, but...
Yes, but he can come speak to this as well, because we've had we've had some great discussions in the last 6 months about this very issue. So the library has traditionally partnered with the schools.
Right.
We share the cost of providing internet service. Peter Thompson over at the school district has provided additional support to our IT team when needed. And recently, Bob has become part of that conversation, and we are actually in the midst right now of talking about a shared services agreement to that would enable us to share resources by way of a staff person that may be able to work in all 3 locations. So, yeah.
We've just started preliminary discussions now. The school district had a network engineer shared with Hopewell Township School District. That network engineer resigned. So now they're in need of a network engineer, and so we're kind of, since we outsourced that, we're all starting to talk so that we can incorporate the library, the school district, and the town, trying to reduce the cost but get better quality service.
And we're also looking at things that we can do so that we're all using the same kinds of systems so that we're not running into communication problems.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is
Thank you very much. I've asked Deanna to join me if there's any questions regarding the capital program that Deanna is responsible for. But I'd like to just start out to talk about the engineering and what's known as the Community Development Department. Includes engineering, planning, zoning, historic preservation, and the building department. It's the entire 3rd floor of this building. And we've worked very hard to integrate as a team after the consolidation. We hold weekly staff meetings, discuss issues, work to address issues, and we're working to try to build a culture that is responsive to our residents, responsive to neighbors. So when somebody calls in, they have a concern, we can respond. And what we work to do is to use internet as much as possible so that we encourage people, if they have concerns, if they have questions, to email it so that we can then document how the responses and so forth, and we're as transparent as possible. And the internet has worked out very, very well in that regard, and also, quite frankly, holds people accountable for representations that are made that we need to follow through and make sure that we deliver on those promises. In the engineering department, we've had challenges. Our staff has reduced from 16 staff members to 13 staff members, and we have the same workload. Deanna will speak in a few minutes regarding the number of capital projects that we're doing, but we have multiple projects that we're managing at this point. In addition, with our planning department is very active, three-member department. Zoning, with the consolidation of the zoning operations and so forth, that seems to have worked very, very well. And again, we have people in place that are responsive and can address questions relating to zoning and get back to people in a timely manner. Same way with historic preservation, with consolidation of historic preservation office. And with our building department is really sort of over the top at this point because tremendous amount of construction going on, tremendous amount of construction at the university. We have Copperwood, we have the Hun School addition going on, we have Avalon Bay that's ready to break loose, and John Pentinati tells me with the amount of construction activity going on in this town right now, we're one of the top 5 communities in the state with the amount of activity. And if you take a look at what's happening on university campus, just Arts and Transit alone, $350 million project, and all the other projects that are occurring. Our time goes by very quickly in engineering, and the days and weeks just sort of whiz on by. Deanna will probably touch on the Complete Streets initiative that the engineering department has taken on to make this community more bicycle friendly, make it more walkable. In addition, we monitor state agencies, Department of Transportation, working with DOT with the improvements, repairs that they're doing to Route 206, and later this summer they're going to be resurfacing a portion of Route 27 as well, and we work very closely with Mercer County. But our goal is to be as responsive as we can to our neighbors and to our residents, and to serve this community as best as we can. And with that, perhaps Deanna would want to briefly review the capital program.
Sure. As Bob indicated, we are looking to completely represent the needs of Princeton residents, and we have found over the years that in order to do that for our capital projects, we need to be responsible for the design. Obviously, we're part of the contracting process, but we also follow our projects through the construction management and inspection. So currently, we have 2 projects under construction. With the approval of the capital budget, we'll be looking for upwards of 7 projects under construction this year, as well as the ongoing design projects that we'll be doing for next year's capital budget. So 3 of the roads that are part of this capital budget, Mount Lucas, Hamilton, and Prospect, all have NJDOT grant funds associated with those projects. They need to be awarded by the end of the year. We're also using them as demonstration projects for the Complete Streets initiative that was put in place as part of our circulation element of the master plan in November of last year. So we are working on accommodating all users into these roads through our design process. We're looking at the bicyclists, pedestrians, as well as vehicles. So we're excited about the opportunity to move ahead with these projects. If you have any questions on the capital projects, please ask me. Thanks.
And one other thing I'd like to mention, and that is with each of the departments in terms of other expenses and so forth, we're either holding the line on what the expenses were last year, or we're less than we were last year.
Okay. Questions from council on my right?
Thanks. You're doing a great job. I didn't realize that you were reduced by 3 people. On Hamilton, what's going on with the Hamilton? What's going to happen with Hamilton, and which parts of Hamilton?
The part of Hamilton that's in this budget is from Harrison Street to Snowden.
Okay.
Right, so it's the eastern section.
Okay, so I think I remember that now.
Yes.
Lance?
Yeah, thank you. Nice report, as usual. Question, I know in the 6-year capital that you guys have submitted in 2017, I noticed a lot of expenses. Is that because you're going to give me the reason? I'm just wondering. I just noticed every time I read that, it just kept seeing 2017 is like a year that we're going to be hit hard. So I'll make sure I'm not here. But
well, we're very aware of the debt issue that is facing our community, and we heard loud and clear that we really need to look at our spending over the next couple of years and prioritize projects. So there have been projects that were put off until 2017, but typically we're looking at a range of about $4 million a year. You know, in past years, former township alone has been $4 to $5 million in capital. The consolidated community at this point, we're looking at about a $4 million range. This year, we're a little bit less. Last year, obviously, with consolidation, we were quite a bit less. And I think what you're seeing is just that there was a delay of getting funding for projects.
okay, thank you.
Bob, do you recall what the borough, or Sandy, would you recall what the borough's annual expenditures would have been? I mean, I feel like 3 million, were we?
Typically somewhere in the $2 to $3 million a year range, unless we had a really major project like a Mercer Street or something like that, which was a little over 2 into itself.
Right. So for our combined community, we're down.
Oh, absolutely.
Significantly.
I mean, the hardest part, and it's not, these guys certainly made a great case for having more money. The hard part is trying to balance that. Those decisions ultimately lay with you folks, but we have a lot of big ticket items off into the future. Some things, as you met with staff at the last meeting, are not included anywhere in the budget that are, they're out there, whether it's the community park project or a public, major public works facility or whatever. It really is a balancing act, and every year you're going to need to weigh that. I think that when we go down the line and we start talking about capital budgets, and you look at the road miles that we have, we are never really going to be able to keep pace, even if we appropriate, say, $6 million a year at where we should be. That would probably still continue to be underfunding our obligations for infrastructure maintenance, but we still have too many other pressure points in which to try to do that. But they do, I have to say, all in all, we do a great job of maintaining the roads. We get a lot of mileage, I guess that's the way of putting it, out of them, which is good, because we do a very good job when we're out there. But it's something that the council is going to need to look at, over the next couple years and try to decide, all right, where are your pressure points for big projects and how are we going to continue to invest in the infrastructure?
I think this came out at the last meeting, but I feel like, I don't know whether other people on council feel this way, I would like to see the wish list as well and have a discussion about that, just so we know what was taken off. And
Kathy and I talked about that, and we'll package that up for you before we do an adoption, because I think that's probably going to warrant having a longer-term discussion anyway, probably a meeting into itself, so that you just have a real good idea of what's out there. The tens of millions of dollars worth of projects that just, didn't make the first 6-year cut.
And I also would really like to thank the engineering department. So last year was our first year to work together, I guess a little bit before on the pool. You really are incredibly responsive to people, and it's a joy to refer things to you because you're very prompt in replying to people. So thank you.
Yes, I want to echo that. Thank you very much. I have 2 wishes, and I don't know if they're on this list, but in this building, the noise, even if we could just turn off the blowers when we're having a meeting, is that possible?
You have to have some circulation in the room. Clearly, the other night...
Sometimes they come on so loud you can't hear.
We actually are working on that. Someone from Public Works had done some work in the room next door and did some work on the dampers, so that when that kicks on, it won't, like make your hair suck straight up and look like mine. So this one's next up on that burner list, so, we just need to kind of find out what is exactly wrong with it, but, yeah, it's a problem. We had the same problem in Borough Hall, if you remember, some of the ceiling tiles would rattle when the HVAC kicked on, so some things are just not, we can't handle just through consolidation, so.
My other wish is what I always have been asking for is an org chart. Do you have an org chart that you could share with us? That would be great. That's next.
Any comments on the pothole repair program?
Yes, pothole repair next on the list is Mercer Road between Quaker and the Lawrence Township line. Lots of complaints regarding that road and also the lower section of Quaker, and we're hoping to be able to award a contract for that in the very, very near future. Public Works is working on other areas, of course, but those are the two major roads that we see as real challenges at this point.
Any other questions from council? Any questions from public? Ms. Cherry?
I think I'm getting stiff here. Kip Cherry, 24 Dempsey. It's not a question. First of all, Bob was very responsive about the Mercer Street because we have a major battlefield event coming up on May 24th, which is Memorial Day weekend, and I got very excited very quickly about the road being closed, so it will be open by that point, and I'm very relieved. The other thing is I want to thank both Deanna and Bob for their work on the Transco pipeline, which is an ongoing thing. It's very, very difficult. It's going to be very hard, I think, on the community, on the bridge. It's going to happen, I'm afraid, but we are still working at endangered species. We're working at the wetlands. DEP has been out many times. They are doing verification they've never done before, which is another question altogether about the quality of what they've been doing. But in any event, they are rising to the occasion with a lot of pressure, and Senator Bateman also deserves a thanks on that too. And so anyway, I just want to thank Bob and Deanna for terrific work there, and I hope that they'll continue because we sure need them. Thank you.
Thank you, Kip. Any further questions or comments from the public? Bob, thank you very much. Deanna, thank you. Next on our agenda is Captain and Chief Designee Nick Sutter, who will present the Police and Police Communications Budget Workshop.
Good evening. Thought I would just start by highlighting some of the information that goes behind some of our line items in our operating budget, and it can get confusing if you don't have some of the information that stands behind it, and then explain our capital requests and why we're requesting what we are. First of all, if you remember back during the consolidation process, there was a lot of talk about standardization. Standardization was a big issue in 2013 in our finances and our budgeting. We needed to standardize things like uniforms, medical equipment, emergency response equipment, weapons, all types of different systems that were different in the two former towns. A lot of that occurred during consolidation, but much of it continued through 2013. Things like medical equipment, for instance, oxygen tanks, all the types of automatic defibrillators, they all had to be standardized because in emergencies, we share vehicles. Officers are assigned to different vehicles. If the vehicles are different and the equipment's in different places, obviously it causes problems. So that was a huge issue for us going into consolidation, and something that we got, for the most part, taken care of during 2013 to the best that we could. There's more improvements that need to be made there. Uniforms, if you recall, we did I thought as a department, a consolidated department, a good job of picking maybe I'm a little biased, picking a uniform that half the force had a similar uniform. And we were able to save some costs there and only have to outfit half the department. Uniforms are provided by the department through the collective bargaining agreement. But we do so, I think, in a very, fiscally responsible manner. It's just not that officers are given a wish list and get whatever they want. We do daily and 2 yearly inspections of all equipment, uniform equipment, and items are ordered on an as-needed basis, not just because I want a new pair of pants. So there's a checks and balances there, and for the most part, I see the spending with the uniforms is prudent and about where it should be. We also spent, you see, some money on consultants, and that was a large part done through the consolidation process and accreditation process. We consulted with the Rogers Group and some other professional consultants to help us through these things that we went through, consolidation, accreditation, and I see the benefits from that were tremendous, really tremendous. That was money I feel well spent. We also made some improvements in that area that I wanted to bring out. In our department, we require a physical fitness test, and we have a wellness program. And as part of that program, we require our officers to receive medicals, fitness for duty medicals, to make sure they're fit for duty and that they're able to participate in our program. In the former Princeton Borough, the department footed that entire bill. We used our physicians and paid that full amount of money. Through the consolidation process and in conjunction with the PBA, we were able to recognize a fairly large savings in the fact that we're allowing our officers to provide certificates from their own physicians, and therefore alleviating that expense from the town. And it accomplishes the same goal. The officers are happy with it. And it's just I thought, a good example of some of the forethought that went into some of the expenditures we were making. As far as the operating budget, there was one other thing I wanted to bring up to you, communications equipment. A large part of our communications infrastructure was upgraded during consolidation, so that was really a great thing. The borough was in tremendous need of it, and the former township was in tremendous need of improvements. We've made those improvements. We're in really good shape there for the long future. So I feel that that's been probably our largest expenditure that we were facing before consolidation. I think we did a good job in meeting it, and we are in very good shape there going forward. I would just like to very briefly move to the capital requests that we're making and then take some questions. I'll just highlight several of the requests that we made, the first being weapon standardization. We set priorities during the consolidation process and sacrificed, maybe a strong word, but made the expenditures or requested the expenditures where we really needed them, and knowing that we were going to have to request more going forward. We're in a position right now where we need to continue the standardization of some of our weapon systems that are still currently different, and that's really a one-time expense that will be requested, and going forward that will all be one system and will just require regular maintenance. And really with that, any questions that you may have?
Bernil.
Questions from council?
Hi, Nick. So talking about capital, when the accreditation body was here earlier this year, in addition to telling us we needed a chief, so we've made progress there. They told us that we really needed to replace cars. So can you walk us through with some more granularity what you're recommending in terms of the car upgrades?
Yes. We're definitely making that a priority. I thought that although our vehicles aren't placed in our capital budget, we tried to keep our capital budget modest and fiscally responsible in knowing that we were going to be asking for some upgrades in our fleet. We've repurposed, I believe, 9 vehicles from our current fleet since 2013. Some were repurposed, actually some were, I guess, laid to rest. They weren't usable anymore. The last vehicle that was purchased by the 2 former departments was in 2011. So we're at a point right now where we're really kind of falling behind, and we have a schedule that's fairly robust and aggressive in our requests for vehicles, but once after maybe 2 or 3 years, we'll be back kind of where we have to be, and that'll drop off. And I realize, again, some of that may be a wish list, but there are some vehicles that really need immediate replacing, and that will also assist us with our, standardization process that I was talking about earlier. So I would really highlight that as our number one request to you, would be a robust, aggressive pursuit of vehicle replacement.
I think you're going to see that coming from administration. We have the first draft of that that's been done. We've had the vehicles assessed by our mechanical staff, and we just need to kind of fine-tune that, see what vehicles are worth passing down, because some are, some aren't. One of the goals we have is to get rid of all of these Crown Vics that we drive around. They don't get good gas mileage as police cars, and they don't get good gas mileage out on the street. They just, and their maintenance headaches, quite frankly. So we're going to move through a replacement plan that will upgrade those for the normal staff and give them much more energy efficient vehicles. We're starting that through the construction office. Cars will filter down in the engineering vehicles will filter down to some of the other departments, and we'll have a nice plan set up for that. But I do want to just emphasize that the police department, both the borough and the township, when they were separate, did a good job of holding on to those vehicles. But now a lot of them are, really maintenance problems for us. So we did what we set out to do, which was to reduce the fleet. Now we have to set out to make sure that we have a fleet that's operational.
To follow up on that, Bob, I seem to recall, so you said the last car purchased by either municipality was 2011.
I believe that's right, Ms. Butler.
You would know better than I, but I think that resonates with what I remember. So both, I know in the borough, we had a budget for vehicles that wasn't spent in anticipation of consolidation. So is that money, did that end up in the surplus? Or
yes.
Is there a separate, so it wasn't like we didn't spend it, so it's been put away somewhere because we knew we were eventually going to have to spend it?
We provided, I think, for 4 vehicles in the operating budget for the police this year. But no, any of that money just ended up reverting to surplus in both communities.
Okay.
I didn't see in the budget, but I might have missed it, anything about the camp that are you preparing for a summer camp program right now?
Yes, the Youth Academy?
Yeah.
Yes. The Youth Academy is primarily done by officers on duty and volunteers. And the only costs that we really incur are for some printing and some giveaways that we have that come out of our operating budget. But the majority of that is done by, again, officers at no extra cost to the municipality.
So how many officers, how many weeks is it, and how many kids are involved, and how many officers are involved?
We have a huge waiting list, actually, of kids that want to get involved, but it's 1 week. It's primarily done by the Safe Neighborhoods Unit with all other officers within the department contributing time in their expertise, and it's a class size of about 30.
So how many officers about?
Eight to nine.
8 to 9 for 1 week?
Yeah, not full-time, though. They only come in 1-hour blocks. We only have an instructor in a 1-hour block, and Safe Neighborhoods Unit, the 3 officers are primarily assigned to that for the week. So 3 officers assigned for 8-hour days for the week.
Okay, I'm just curious about that. What was the other question I had?
Ride-alongs, perhaps?
No, that's not part of the budget question. Oh, yes, the software. I know that the IT consultant mentioned a glitch with the software that seemed to be kind of an expensive glitch, but I wondered what's going on with that.
Yeah, we've been working with the vendor on that kind of feverishly for the last year with glitches that we've been experiencing in our records maintenance, and more on the records maintenance side. It's we haven't been 100%. I don't want to say satisfied. It's not what we expected. We've been working. He's been the provider's been very accommodating to us, but we need to do better. And that came out in the IT survey through the survey that was done by the strategic planning individual, and it's an issue. So we're working through it right now, and as you notice, we haven't made any requests. We're not at a panic stage with it at all, but it's something that's on our radar, if you will.
Well, is it something that we're not using at all yet? That's?
No, it's our main. It's our main system.
You are using it?
Yeah, we're using
Okay.
that's our main records keeping and dispatch, computer-aided dispatch system.
Okay.
So there's very good things about it, and there's some things that aren't so good about it. A lot of them are being fixed, but it wasn't to the level that we expected.
And does that have to do with the police reports that we get?
It's the police reports, it's the way in which certain things are, data is captured, the way that data is generated as well.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, that's part of it.
I mean, because I know we're still
Small
getting
piece of it.
these, like you print them out on the paper and then scan them back in and give them to us.
That's one of the...
That's the only interface I've had with it.
That's one of the issues that we have with it, yes.
Nick, you had mentioned consultants in the beginning of this, and we met with Pinnacle. Or Nike, the guy, did we move forward with that? Are you using them?
The first stage is done. We actually talked as recently as late last week about setting up dates for them and getting a proposal from them. That hasn't come forward as of yet.
Okay, thank you.
And can you just talk a little bit about your expectations for overtime this year? You know, there were periods last year where we saw the drop in overtime and your ability to manage, and then we saw a spike at the end of the year. And so how are we doing, and what are you anticipating?
So I see continued problems with overtime in our communications area. And that overflows into our sworn officers, because in emergencies and when we're short, we have to move a certified police officer that is dispatch qualified into that arena to fill shortages. That is going to continue. It's something that we're looking at. It's been on our radar. We've been discussing it at public safety repeatedly, so it's something that I hope to get addressed. The overtime, most of our overtime shortages, our overtime expenditures are for mandatory shortages. It's when a squad, we have a set personnel strength for each squad, for each shift. And when that falls below that level, we are required to fill it on an overtime basis. And that's the overwhelming majority of our expenditures. They're mandatory, they're needed. And it's something that is we try to control through management, but it's something that will always be there and that we keep an eye on.
Further questions from council? Questions from the public? Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Next on the agenda is Bob Gregory, Director of Emergency Services.
Hello, thank you for having me. I just want to point out that in the back is firefighter A.J. Goldman, Lieutenant Noah Brown, Chief Dan Tomlin,